Now that we are dealing with projects, there is another topic we have to talk about relating to projects. And this is the topic of absolute versus relative path. So here we have two image planes with a texture map applied to it. And these two look exactly the same just in the viewport, and they really are. It's this exact same texture applied to them, but for pipeline purposes, this becomes incredibly important. Right now, this is not a problem. If you were to work on the same computer and you always have the same directory for everything, this is perfectly fine. But if we were to move the project around, one of these would break, and that would be this guy here. And let's talk about why that is. This is a problem you've definitely experienced if you used Maya for a little bit and you were to move your projects around and suddenly you just can't find any images. The paths are all broken, and that's due to this exact issue. If we click on the relative one here and then we go to the shader, just called relative, under color, we have a map here. And this one here, it lives under source images and disp logo. What this means is that this disp logo actually lives directly under the project directory. And this is what we can see here, that this here actually lives directly under source images and this logo. This means Maya knows exactly where it lives because it lives in a directory that we've specified for the project here. So it's incredibly easy for Maya to figure out where this is supposed to live. But now if we were to look at this other guy here and we check this out. So here you can see the path is an absolute path. This just means that it's forcing in the entire directory of this file, which means now if you were to move the project from one directory to another, maybe you change it from a C drive to a D drive, or whatever it might be. Now this path is going to break entirely. So this here is a very like absolute way of doing it. It's a very brutal way of doing it because now you're forcing Maya to look in only this directory. And if this directory isn't correct, then it's going to break. So basically, if this here is different, what I just deleted, if this stuff here is different, then Maya is going to break entirely. But with this guy, as long as you can move your project around as much as you want to, as long as it's set in the right directory, it's going to find all the images. So this is essential if you're dealing with any kind of collaborative environment where this is important. You can also go under Windows, General Editors, and here we have the File Path Editor. So here you can see what's actually going on and how much easier using a relative path is compared to an absolute path. Here you can actually see how where the first image lives, and just lives on the source images, and the other one lives under this long and nasty directory. So though, if this happens, if you have been using relative or absolute paths for an entire project, you can also do it here. You can also hit repath files and you can find where this actually lives and it can do it for you. But I highly recommend that when you are working in Maya, that you put your texture maps in the correct directory and you put everything in the directories they're supposed to be. It just makes everything a lot easier. And as an added bonus, if you now were to give this project to somebody else, you can just take this entire folder, the entire Maya project folder, and just give that to somebody else. And then they can go to File, Set Project. And as long as they find this file here, the workspace file, they're going to load in everything exactly the way it was on your computer. This is regardless of complexity of the scene. If you're dealing with some crazy animated series where you have 200 shots and simulation and fancy rendering, or if you just have a single product shot, it's going to load the project exactly the same way. So it sounds like a very trivial issue, relative path versus absolute path, but it's really not a trivial issue. Before I learned about this, I was working on a project and we were working collaboratively between somebody else. They worked on a different computer and they were animating some files I was working on. So I've been rigging up the files and setting them all up, and they were referencing in the files. And when they got the files, they had to repath all of them every single time. And when I got them back, we had to repath the project every single time, or repath the files every single time. And this was simply due to the fact that the project wasn't saved. So we solved it in the hackiest way possible. We got someone to write a script for us, which would automatically repath the files for us, where we hard coded in all of these paths. So if his computer was Michael, we would hit a button which replaced his Michael all the Michael strings with Henning strings, which would then make it work. But the fix for us, once we learned about this, was literally do file, set project, and just put all the files in correct directories, because then we were using absolute or relative paths instead of absolute paths. So that's just a quick little story of how I got crazily screwed over by myself for not using projects and relative paths, and how it cost us a lot of time and money and a lot of frustration.